Holiday greetings to everyone. Merry Christmas to those who celebrate and Happy New Year. G'day to all you lovely people and welcome back to my channel. I'm Kathy and today I'm going to tell you what I got up to in spring. It is actually really early in December when I'm recording this. I'm actually a little ahead and it is, I think, the second day of summer and it's raining. Yeah, look, I'm in winter clothes because it is still cold here. Unfortunately, our spring did not turn out to be as nice as we were led to believe. September was lovely. It was absolutely gorgeous. But October and November have been chilly and very wet. I've hardly spent any time outdoors. There have been, of course, some nice days, but yeah, nothing like September. September was just delightful. So I don't know if it's going to get as hot as people are predicting this summer because, yeah, it is certainly not hot right now. Though next week we are going to have warmer weather. Thank God. So that's the weather. What have I been up to? Well, I'm sure that some of you already know this. I got myself a puppy. Oh my God. What a lot of work. I love her, but she has exhausted me. I had a fall in August, late August, and quite a nasty one, and it took me quite a while to recover. And I thought I was fine, and then I got the puppy, and she just exhausted me. I got her in October. Her name is Cleopatra, because she looks very regal, but we call her Cleo for short. She is my third German Shepherd puppy, actually, so I knew what I was up for, but she just... yeah, she was so much work to begin with because, of course, you know, you have to teach them everything. She has made my house look like a cyclone has hit it. I've had to put everything away because she just grabs everything. We are slowly getting there, but the first month was hell. Anyone who tells you puppies aren't hard work doesn't know what they're talking about. Well, especially if they're indoor dogs, and mine are always indoor dogs. I mean, she's gorgeous and she makes me laugh and she brings me so much joy, but sometimes I can't bear the sight of her because she's so cheeky. She's smart. Yeah, that's what happens when you get a very smart dog who is young. She hasn't even been alive more than 4 months. She's still not even 4 months. So of course she is just pushing all the boundaries and trying everything, chewing everything, taking everything. I warned her, if she touches my books, she's dead. Well, not quite dead, but she did. She took one off my side table where I always keep my books that I'm reading and took it outside where it was wet and completely ruined it. So she got into big trouble this week because that was only a few days ago. And then the next day, she was delightful. She was so good and obedient. Well, maybe she knew that she'd crossed the line, but yeah, this puppy is... I don't regret getting her, of course, but she is just so much work. Seriously, so much work. And I won't deny, sometimes I did think about giving her away, but I thought, just persevere. It will get better. It always gets better. You just need time. And it's paying off. I can see the improvements. I can see how much she's learning, how fast she's learning, because she is learning really fast. As I said, she's very smart, so she's picking up commands quickly. She just sometimes chooses whether to obey them or not. But she has dominated my life. All of spring, I guess, well, from October to now, and will continue to dominate it. I have to give her so much attention and training, so it's been really tiring, though I think we're finally falling into a routine and I'm actually feeling like I got some of my stamina back. Kind of had to with this puppy because she's just full of beans and just never stops. She's currently, I think, doing something. I don't know if I want to know, so I'm just going to continue recording. I'm also thinking of doing like a montage of different videos I've taken of her so you guys can see what she looks like. She's really pretty dog. Yeah, I can't deny it. She's all fluffy and she reminds me of my first German Shepherd. She was also a medium head like Cleo is, and she does similar things. In a way, it's been really good. I think if she reminded me too much of Remy, my old dog, who you guys all know, it would have been much harder to deal with. But yeah, she's helping me get over the grieving and helping make my life interesting and very chaotic. Perhaps that's not a bad thing, right? I can be a little too orderly sometimes and she's created chaos, but all the problems that she does cause me are outweighed by the love that she gives me and the, I guess, laughter, which I needed after losing Remy. So I don't remember what else I have done in spring because she took up most of my time. Yeah, I have not been watching all that much. I've not knitted at all because she is untrustworthy and she will grab my knitting and run. She has a habit of pulling my jumpers out of the wardrobe, so I've had to put gates up in certain places so she can't get into there. So no knitting, and because she doesn't like really loud sound, I've had to slowly get her accustomed to the TV. So I haven't been watching all that much except for a few things here and there. I did buy Grimm on Blu-ray. I've always liked Grimm and I'm really enjoying rewatching it because it's been a while. I'm currently in the middle of season 2. I've taken a break from Psych and the comedies because sometimes I was in such despair with Cleo that I wasn't in the mood for anything comedic. I watch a little bit of Psych every now and again, but I've been watching a lot more of Grimm. And I just started Wednesday, which I'm really liking. I've only seen one episode so far, but I love Tim Burton and he directed the first episode. I don't know if he directed the others, but I thought the girl that they chose is doing a brilliant job at playing Wednesday. He's always been one of my favourite characters. So that's about all I've watched. Movies, it's been very, very few. I can't even recall what movies, if any, I've watched. As for what I've been reading, I'm going to go through each month. In September, I read 17 and a half books. 17 and a half. Obviously, I didn't finish one. And 4 of them were books by Nao Marsh. I had not liked her first 3 books, and I thought I need to try a few more because I could see she was slowly improving. So I read Death by Ecstasy, Vintage Murder, Artists in Crime, Death by Air, and I didn't finish in September, but I have now Death in White Tie, I think that's right. I actually enjoyed most of them and I saw a major improvement in her plotting. I still didn't love them and I'm not going to say they're my favourites, but I don't regret reading them. I'm also getting more attached to her Inspector Allen, Roderick Allen, whereas I didn't like him at the beginning. I always think with authors, you need to give them a bit of a chance because they can take a bit of time to find their groove. And I feel like she did find her groove in these books, so I'm enjoying the mysteries a lot more. I also read 2 books by Timothy Zahn, part of his Thrawn series. The first was Thrawn and the other was Thrawn Alliances, which I've already spoken about in a video, so I won't go into a lot of detail, but I really enjoyed those. Then there was Animal Farm by George Orwell. I loved this book. This was so good. It was so clever, actually. The animals that Orwell chose to represent, say, certain political types or certain types of people, using pigs as the leaders of this revolt, using sheep as the main, citizens of this world. There was just so many clever things about it. I believe this was based on his very anti-Soviet feelings, I think in particular regarding Stalin, and it's quite obvious, but it also applies today because it's a very cynical book about how power does corrupt. Doesn't matter what system you are in. I think it applies to capitalism as much as it does to any socialist or communist regime. But I love this book, and I was a bit heartbroken at what happened to one of the characters, but I thought using animals to represent certain types of people was very clever, and he chose very well. Yeah, excellent book if you haven't read it. That was my classic for the month, but I also ended up reading The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame, which I've never read. I think if I had been a child and read this, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. As an adult, it is sometimes hard to read children's books and feel the same kind of magic because we're so impressionable as kids. You know, the wonder of having these talking animals, for example. I found it really charming, but I think it wasn't my favourite children's book that I've read. Yeah, I think though it would be excellent for young kids. Yeah, particularly, say, pre-teens. But I'm very glad I read it because I've always wanted to. I guess I was in the mood for more mystery, so I read, I think, 3 books by Jane Harper, the Australian author. I read The Survivors, The Lost Man, and Exiles. I really like Survivors. I thought out of all her murder mysteries, this one was, or had, the best ending. But apparently it isn't one of the most popular ones. It also dealt with feelings of guilt, I guess. And I like the characters. The Lost Man I've already spoken about in a previous video. I liked it except for certain things. And Exiles had Aaron Falk again. I think it's meant to be the last book that he appears in. And of course it also had some of the other characters that we had met in her previous books. And I always enjoy seeing characters from previous books. Yes, I had to look it up just to make sure, but it is. It's about a woman who disappears at, I think, a festival, but leaving her baby infant in the pram, whatever they call it. And I think it was a year later, and there was still some question as to exactly what happened. There was some debate whether she had committed suicide or whether something had happened. I found this one easy to predict. The mystery was good. There were enough clues laid though for you to be able to work out what actually did happen to this woman. I'm not going to say if it was a crime or whether it was suicide. That's something you'll have to decide if you read it. It was a better one, I think, of hers. Though there were things that I didn't love about it. There was a romance in it which, I'll be honest, left me completely cold. So maybe romance isn't her thing, because I do like romances in books. I really like this author's descriptions of places, in particular in Australia. She seems to capture Australia very well, whether it is the outback or, you know, during drought conditions. This one lacked atmosphere, I would say, compared to her others, though I thought that the mystery was a little bit better than some of her earlier ones. So obviously I was in the mood, yeah. I also picked up a book that I've had for a while. I can't remember when I bought it, at least several years ago, prior to my having a channel. And of course it just sat on the shelf and I thought, it's time to read this. It was The Wife and the Widow by Christian White. Now, I had a bit of an issue with his writing to begin with. It was a little too repetitive and I thought it needed much heavier editing. I mean, the same word was used in 3 consecutive sentences, which I thought, well, it was just jarring. But as the mystery unfolded, it became really intriguing for me. And there was a very surprise twist, which I did not see coming and I really liked. Yeah. I didn't love the end at all. No, I didn't love the end, but the mystery was well done and it kept you guessing. So I'm not sure if I want to try anything else of his. I guess if it's a story that sounds interesting, I might. But I'm glad I read it. And I'm glad I persevered because I was a little put off initially by his writing. And last I read 5 Terry Pratchett Discworld books. I was in the mood. I read Soul Music, Interesting Times, Masquerade, Feet of Clay, and Hogfather. I'm not going to go into detail about the Discworld books because I will most likely talk about them in a video in the future. But as always, he is a joy to read. I really liked Hogfather in particular, and I think Masquerade was also one I really loved. I think I was in the middle of Jingo in September, but I didn't finish it till October because I wanted to have read at least half of his Discworld books, and now I'm over half, so I'm very pleased. In October, I read 10 books. Most likely because I got Cleo and she made it really hard for me to do much reading. I read 2 Discworld books, Jingo and The Last Continent, I think it was, yes. I liked Jingo. I can't recall The Last Continent, so I guess that says everything, right? I don't think I liked it as much. I could be wrong though. Yeah, no, I did not like The Last Continent. It was kind of a satire on Australia, and perhaps as an Australian, it sometimes was a little jarring, even a little offensive as to all the cliches that Pratchett had included. Yeah. And I have not liked Rincewind much lately. I love the professors from the Unseen University. They are hilarious, but Rincewind is just getting really boring, I think. So whenever he was in the book, I was like, oh, yeah, I just don't care. I want to get back to the wizards from the university because they were a lot of fun. I also read the last Thrawn series book, which was Treason. Again, I've spoken about this in a video, so I'm not going to go into detail. Then I read The Tea Ladies by Amanda Johnson, an Australian author, which I bought because it reminded me of the Thursday Murder Club books. I did not love this. No, I didn't find it believable that tea ladies would work out a crime. It seemed a bit ridiculous to me, and something else that happened to a main character was so obvious from the beginning that it just didn't feel surprising. The writing was okay, nothing special, wasn't badly written, but it wasn't also one that I really fell in love with. And I don't know if I'm going to be reading any more of her books. But yeah, it just wasn't one that I enjoyed. And I think it was quite obvious who was going to be the murderer. Then for my classic, I read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which I've never read, by, I think it's Robert Louis Stevenson. I've seen films of it. I've seen this character in many different films, but I had never read the book, and it was so different to the films. I'm actually thinking I want to do a review on it, so I'm not going to go in detail, but I really loved this book. I loved the writing, and I loved all the things that the author had to say about our nature, about, let's put it, the duality of our nature, good and evil. And I'm going to leave it there. Thoroughly recommend it if you have not read it, and be prepared to be surprised at how it differs from any films or other adaptations of this character, or characters I should say. I also decided it was time to read Catherine Kerr again, so I started and read 2 of her books from her second arc. I think it's called The Westland Cycle. The first was A Time of Exile, and the second was A Time of Omens. I really enjoyed these. Yeah, I think I enjoyed them even more than the first series this time around anyway. It has kind of broadened the story, I guess, because we're now going to different places. I gotta say though that Jill, the main character from the first arc, I did not like as much in this one. I found her really nasty sometimes actually, and pushy and arrogant. And I guess I also miss Nevin because we didn't see a lot of Nevin. I am not a big fan of Rodri, and I certainly didn't like him more in these books, but I love Salamander, one of her other characters, and I really like the story. I was going to read the third one immediately, but it deals with a completely new character, and I thought, no, I'm not in the mood for that. So I put it aside for now, but I will get back to it soon. I also read Nosferatu by Joe Hill, who is Stephen King's son. I have read several books by him and I like his writing. He reminds me a lot of his father's style. And Nosferatu, you would think, dealt with vampires. It was more emotional vampires, I guess. It was an intriguing idea, and I liked the main character, though she wasn't always a pleasant character, but I found it a little overlong. I think it could have been shortened by at least 100, if not 200 pages. I didn't find it horrific, but then I'm no judge when it comes to horror because I don't scare easily. I find what other people think as horrific as, oh yeah, it's fiction, so I don't really care. I can't say if it was really horrific, though there were a few horrible things that happened. I liked it, I didn't love it. And like I said, I think it was a little too long. And then I read a few more murder mysteries. One was Marjorie Allingham, who was considered one of the queens of mysteries from the 20s. The first book was The Crime at Black Dudley. I have already spoken about this in my video on Agatha Christie, and all I will say was that I wasn't that impressed, and her writing was okay, but her main character, who apparently appears in future books, he plays a minor role, and he was a bit of a buffoon. And I think he is more into intrigue rather than mysteries, and I'm more interested in mysteries, murder mysteries. Sorry, Claire is just snoring. Anyway, and the last book I read in October was Clouds of Witness, I think, by Dorothy L. Sayers, the second book in her Lord Whimsy series. I hated this one, really did. I disliked the elitism and snobbery in this book so much. Our main hero is the son of a duke and the brother of a duke, and his brother is accused of murder. And apparently back in the 20s there were certain laws as to how peers of the realm were tried. They have to be tried, I think, by their actual peers rather than a jury. Wow, just this special preferential treatment that they get, and Sayers' obvious admiration for this just put me off entirely. I did not like the mystery all that much, and I certainly didn't like how it was resolved. The way I see it is this one was the worst one I've read, because I've read several since then, but that one was just terrible, and I'm surprised I continued reading her after that. In November, I read 11 books. 3 of those were Dorothy L. Sayers books. I honestly don't know why I continued reading them after the second one, because I hated that so much, but everyone says she's such a good writer, and I thought maybe I need to read a few more. I found that her character Whimsy improved a little, but he's still so pompous sometimes that I don't like it. I am not impressed with her mysteries. I also read that I should read a book that introduces Harriet Vane, a character who's going to reappear in future books. I think that was Sweet Poison, Strong Poison. Wow, that one was so strange. The romance was completely unbelievable, and I did not find this character, Harriet Vane, at all charming. So I don't know if I'm going to read any more. I think altogether now I've read 5. So I guess we'll see. I don't think there's a lot more, so perhaps I might try one more, and we'll see. At this point, she's going to go on the back burner because I do not love her main character. Do you sometimes feel like, well, everyone says Dorothy L. Sayers is so fantastic, so I need to read her books? And I keep thinking it'll get better because I can see slight improvement. I just don't see much. I see a lot more improvement in Naomi Marsh's writing than I do in Dorothy L. Sayers so far. Though the last book I read, which I think was Strong Poison, was much less pompous and snobby than the previous book. So I guess we will see if I will continue with her or not. I also read one more Terry Pratchett book, Carpe Jugulum. And I think I read that because I didn't like The Last Continent. Carpe Jugulum has Granny Weatherwax, and I love this one. It also has vampires. This one, however, was much less funny than previous books. It felt a bit more serious, which I didn't mind, but I thoroughly enjoyed that. There's a lot more I can say about it, but I'm going to leave it there. I also read The Bullet That Missed and The Last Devil to Die by Richard Osman, his latest two Thursday Murder Club books. I loved these. Yeah. I had been holding on to them for a little while because I didn't want to just gobble them up as soon as I got the last one. And I'm glad I waited because I really enjoyed reading them. I just whizzed through them actually. I liked both of them. I particularly liked, I think it was The Bullet That Missed, because it introduced some more great characters. And the last one is a little bit poignant, and that's all I want to say. But these were just as charming as the previous books, and this is a series that I'm just going to buy automatically whenever he brings out a new one. Though apparently he's starting a new series, which I don't blame him. He may want a bit of a break from this, though I believe he will return to the Thursday Murder Club in the future. But highly recommend them if you haven't tried the Thursday Murder Club books. They are a joy. They are empathetic and sympathetic of the elderly. They are fun. They're not always easy to predict. And there's a lot of laughs in there as well as some, pathos at times. Very well done. One of my favourite mystery writers at the moment. I also read one that's been on my list for a while, my TBR, Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. This is a novel within a novel. It is about an editor reading a manuscript and finds out that it isn't finished. We actually get to read this manuscript with her, which was very reminiscent and I think paid a lot of homage to Agatha Christie, but it was also quite unbelievable at times. There were certain things that I just thought, this wouldn't have happened in the 50s. It just doesn't ring true. That was my feeling reading the manuscript. And I did like that story within the story. It was okay. Wasn't great and a little too similar to Agatha Christie and yet not attaining that same level, I don't think. But then we get to the editor's story, a woman in her, I think, 40s, who decides that she's going to investigate what happened to this author. And that's all I want to say on that. Now, I just found this completely and utterly unbelievable that all these people would bother talking to an editor about their private lives. It just didn't ring true to me at all. And this character had no personality. She was so boring, so dull. I could not believe that I had to spend all this time with this character. I just wanted to go back to the manuscript and find out what happened in that mystery. And then we get to the end, which was predictable, and she acts like an absolute idiot. I mean, seriously, she acted so stupidly that I almost threw the book across the room. I was very unimpressed with this book, actually. In the end, I thought, I'm not even going to give it a 5 out of 10, which is my standard for whether I will ever reread something. I don't think I will ever reread this. It's strange because this book is very popular. People are raving about it, how, I don't know if meta's the right word or how clever it is, but I just found his writing so pretentious, where he thought he was much smarter than he really is, and it just didn't work for me. I did not like his main character, and apparently she's in the next book, so I have zero interest in reading that. But that was probably my biggest disappointment in November. I really hoped I would love this, and I just didn't. I also read Later by Stephen King because I wanted to get onto my Stephen King books, and this one has been sitting there for a while. This one is a hard case crime book about a boy who actually sees dead people. Yes, strains of Sixth Sense. It wasn't bad. I think perhaps it needed to be longer to make it more enjoyable, where he could have explored some of the characters a bit more, and I hated the ending. Absolutely hated it. This one was very disappointing to me. But I heard it was really good, and I don't agree. It kept telling us that this is a horror story. I don't need that reminder. It should be horrific on its own, and I didn't find it horror at all. I just found it lacked punch. Shame, because I generally do love his books. The other one I read was The Last Smile at Sunder City. Yeah. After I had done the video about whether I'm reading the books that I buy, I decided I have to start chipping away at those that I had hauled. That's why I ended up reading Later and The Last Smile. That one is by Luke Arnold, who is also an actor. And it wasn't bad, but his metaphors, his similes were just ludicrous. Some of them were so bizarre that I'd have to stop and think about how they work and realizing they don't make sense. And I found that they distracted me from the actual story. I also found his main character too self-indulgent for my taste. He was dealing with guilt and depression, I guess. I really don't care. I found him just boring. The world that Arnold has introduced in this story sounds interesting. Magic has died as a result of certain actions of humans, so all the non-humans are finding that they are withering away or dying because magic has gone. It's an interesting idea or an interesting premise. I just found the execution of the mystery quite boring. I would have liked to have known a bit more about this world that Arnold has created. There are also flashbacks to the main character's life, which led him to becoming so self-indulgent and guilt-ridden. And whilst that wasn't bad, I could not see what people liked about this character, because I didn't find anything really extraordinary or interesting, and yet he had some powerful friends, and I'll leave it at that. As for the romance, oh my God, yeah, let's just ignore that part entirely. This was not one I really enjoyed, and whilst it isn't a terrible book, I don't have any interest in continuing this series because I think there's another 3. I wasn't in the mood for a heavy-going classic, though I do want to read David Copperfield soon. So I decided to read science fiction classic 2001: A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke. Now, I have seen the film many, many times by Stanley Kubrick, and I loved this film. I really do. I saw it as a teenager, actually, when it first came out. And the book is very, very close to the film, except it does explain a lot more than the film does. In a way, I like it, and in a way, I don't. The film lets you guess at what's going on, whereas Clarke actually describes what's going on and explores what it means to be human, evolution, and things like that. I think in some ways he is a better writer, better descriptive prose writer, for example, than Isaac Asimov, and his dialogue is usually very spare. There's very little of it, whereas Asimov is the reverse. He's much better at dialogue, I think, and delving into philosophical questions. I really enjoyed it and I want to read more of his, but I think I might try something that I know nothing about rather than a book that is based on a film I might have seen. But that was really worthwhile, I thought. And the last book, I think, that I read was Upgrade by Blake Crouch. I have held on to this for a year and I finally read it and I enjoyed it, but it is not my favourite of his. It is about genetics and he went sometimes a little too much into detail regarding genes, and he lost me because I don't know anything about it and I don't really care. I could have done with a lot less of the science in this, and I also found that this upgrade, which improves, say, our main character, also changed him so much that he was not as likable as he was at the beginning. Perhaps that was the point. I'm sure it was the point. But he was so shut off from people, I guess, that it was hard to relate to him. I guess many of the things that Crouch raised in this book is about, do we always need scientific improvements, whether it's ourselves or technology? Does it necessarily improve who we are? Does it make us better people or not? And I think it doesn't, not always. And this genetic therapy or this genetic upgrade definitely did not improve our main character. Plus the ending was disappointing in this one. Yeah, I don't want to say too much actually because I don't want to go into spoilers. Perhaps I'll decide to do a video on it, I'm not sure. But regardless, I just found the actual ending or the epilogue, I would have been much happier if it hadn't been included. And that's all I'm going to say on that. Yeah. So I guess my reading was all over the place. As you can see, I read a bit of fantasy. I think I read mainly murder mysteries and I read a bit of sci-fi. So that makes me happy that I'm mixing it up. And I think I'm enjoying it a lot more because I'm mixing it up. I didn't enjoy everything I read, but there weren't a lot of misses, so that was good. Better than in winter when I really had a lot of misses. As for what I'm going to read next, I have no idea. You guys will find out when I wrap up summer. Yeah. So let's move on because this video is getting very long and I was hoping to make it a short one. Let's move on to my plants. My garden is taken a bit of a beating from Cleo. She has definitely attacked a few things that I've bought or that have existed for a while, killed a few things. She keeps pulling out the sprinkler system from the pots so they're not getting watered. So it doesn't look the best. I have got a bit of footage which I will include and you can see for yourselves how it's looking. As for my indoor plants, I've lost a few more, which I am quite happy about because I decided to buy a few. I only bought 4 and I have no inclination to buy any more. I kind of feel like I'm at the right amount now and I'm roughly at around 75, 77, somewhere there. I haven't done a count recently. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just lose plants because they don't do well. I had one, for example, that had been on its last legs all through winter and then it died in spring. And if that happens, that happens. I'm just not willing to baby them anymore. So I have binned a couple, but they were both dead. I've had a few outbreaks of spider mites. In fact, we just found some recently, even on my Monstera, which has never had spider mites. I noticed he was getting a bit of yellowing on some leaves and I thought it was overwatering because our moisture meter can't reach right down to see whether he's wet down the bottom, but it looks like it might be pests. We've treated him. He is very hardy, so he hasn't killed a lot of leaves off, but hopefully we've eradicated them and he'll recover. And syngoniums, oh my God, talk about pest magnets. I have this lovely, beautiful syngonium, Three Kings, and it must have had pests at least 4 or 5 times this year. Yeah, it's just nuts. Still, I'm usually very successful in getting rid of spider mites because I catch them much earlier than I used to. So hopefully they'll be all right. As I said, I have not been in the mood to buy any plants, but I did buy 4, and they're the ones I'm going to show you. Yeah, Steve, I bought an alocasia. I know. I've said I won't get any alocasias again because they're the devil, but I thought it's been a couple of years, let's give it a go. It is an alocasia, I think sinuta. I will put the name on the screen. It's a lovely little plant, and I've kept it alive 2 weeks, which is longer than every other alocasia I've had. I usually kill them straight away, even though I get them in late spring or summer. But so far this one's doing okay. However, it does want a bit more light and I might have to move it soon. It's got beautiful leaves. It's reminiscent of the dragon scale, but I think it's slightly different. Not much different though. The second one I got, I've seen them many times at Bunnings, but these plants I actually bought from Uprooted, which is where I usually buy plants, and that is the purple waffle plant. I just love how dark their leaves are and how beautiful the colouring is. They almost look crinkly too. It's just gorgeous. It's also a bit of a drama queen. When it's thirsty, it just flops right over, but it's absolutely lovely. And so far it's doing great, so I'm very, very happy. The third plant is Cleopatra crocata. I've had this one before, a smaller one, and I killed it, but I really like this plant, and I try to buy several plants when I buy online so that it, justifies the postage. This is a really pretty little plant. I'm hoping I might be able to keep it alive this time. I've got it under a grow light, and I'll make sure that I give it enough humidity if it doesn't like it there. But so far it's doing well. But the whole reason I placed this order was for this last one. I have been wanting one for several years and they have not been available in Australia, but they finally are. And it is a philodendron El Choco Red. I love this plant. If you guys know my friend Miro at Basic Plants, he has a magnificent large version. Oh, what I wouldn't give to have one that big. Mine is tiny. It's just a little plant, and it was the most expensive, but I didn't care. I think it was only $30 though, which is quite reasonable for a philodendron that is uncommon in Australia. And I'm really, really hoping it'll grow well and become as big as Miro's. I don't know if it will, but you can hope, right? But this one has just such beautiful colouring on the back of its leaves. They're velvety, they're heart-shaped. Oh, what is there not to love with this plant? So I'm really pleased with my purchase, and I'm content to leave it at that. That doesn't mean perhaps I won't go somewhere and see a plant and decide I want it. Since I am well under 80 plants now, close to 75, I can afford a couple more, I think. Yeah. So that is all I have to say, and I know I've rambled way too much, so my apologies for that. Now, of course, I want to hear what you guys got up to, whether it was your spring or whether it was your autumn. You know I always want to hear, and you can let me know down in the comments, or you can contact me on Instagram. Again, I wish you all the best for the season. If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to all of you. I hope it is a great year for all of us. And thank you very much for watching, and now, as usual, I'm going to ask you to either like, comment and subscribe if you haven't already, as it helps my channel to grow. I hope you all have a beautiful day, and I will see you next year. Bye.